The unexpected arrival. The Galactic Empire, a sprawling force that had dominated the galaxy for centuries, was built on fear and absolute control. It was a power that subjugated entire species, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. The Empire's warships were the envy of every corner of the Milky Way, sleek, powerful, and technologically far ahead of any known species. Their iron grip seemed unshakable. Until now. Admiral Zixna, standing on the towering bridge of the Imperial flagship, stared out into the void. Her 6 eyes narrowed as she observed the unexpected anomaly on the radar. A fleet of ships, barely more than a few dozen, appeared on the outer rim of Imperial space, their position strange, their approach even stranger. These ships weren't Imperial. They didn't belong to any species the Empire had conquered. Their designs were rudimentary, mismatched like a child's forgotten toy collection. Zixna's mandibles clicked in irritation. "What is this?" she growled, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "Who dares approach our territory with such a pathetic fleet?" The nervous officer at her side, a quivering Koran, tried to steady his gelatinous form. "Admiral, the ships, they don't match any known designs. They're unlike anything in our database. They are primitive," he stammered, each word trembling with fear. "Primitive." Zixna sneered, waving a clawed hand dismissively. "This is what's disturbing our patrols. It's nothing more than a scrap heap. Their weapons must be laughable, their shields non-existent. What a joke." She gestured to the main screen, zooming in on the fleet. The ships were a bizarre mix of mismatched hulls, patched-up exteriors, and an odd assortment of technologies. Some ships looked like they were made from salvaged wreckage, while others seemed cobbled together from scrap metals and outdated designs. Despite their obvious shortcomings, there was something unnerving about them, something that made Zixna uneasy. "Identify their origin. Find out who these fools are," she commanded. A few tense moments passed as the ship's sensors whirred and hummed. The Koran officer returned with unsettling news. "Admiral, we've identified them. They're humans." The word hit the bridge like a slap to the face. Humans. The last time the Empire had encountered them was decades ago, on the fringes of Imperial space. The humans had been an insignificant species then, their technology far behind the Empire's. The encounter had been swift, an easy victory. They had hardly been worth the Empire's time. And yet, the memory of that first confrontation lingered in Zixna's mind, like an itch she couldn't scratch. "Humans," Zixna muttered to herself, a low growl escaping her throat. "I remember them. They fought like animals, with desperation in their eyes. But they were nothing. We crushed them with ease." The officer hesitated, his voice quivering. "Admiral, this fleet, it's different. They're much further from Earth than anyone would expect. Their technology is still rudimentary. But the way they've assembled their fleet, the way they move, it's not what we'd expect from such an underdeveloped species." Zixna's eyes narrowed. She had no time for second-guessing. "Deploy the 7th Fleet. I want these humans crushed. They will learn their place in the galaxy. No one challenges the Empire." As the orders were relayed, Zixna couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. The humans' fleet, while appearing weak, was too well-timed, too bold for a species that had been considered insignificant for so long. There was more to this than met the eye. On the lid ship of the human fleet, Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the approaching Imperial warships. Her heart pounded in her chest, but there was no fear in her eyes. For years, she had worked tirelessly, building a fleet from the ground up, assembling a patchwork of ships that had been scavenged, modified, and refitted to make the impossible possible. And now, it was time to face the enemy that had tormented the galaxy for centuries. "We've got their attention," Sarah's second-in-command, Meccano, said with a grin. "They're deploying a fraction of their fleet. They've taken the bait." Sarah nodded, her fingers lightly tapping the console in front of her. "Good. Overconfidence is the Empire's biggest weakness. She activated the communication system. All ships, maintain formation. Remember your training. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every species that has suffered under Imperial rule. A chorus of affirmatives came back from her crew. This was no longer just a mission. It was a symbol of defiance, a symbol of what humanity had become. Against all odds, they were about to take the first step in pushing the Empire back. "Weapons hot," Sarah ordered as the Imperial ships loomed ever closer. "Let them fire first. We need to maintain the illusion until the last possible moment." On the Imperial flagship, Zixna watched as the human fleet remained eerily still. They didn't move. They didn't respond to the approaching danger. It was almost as if they were waiting for something. "Pathetic," Zixna muttered, her fingers hovering over the controls, preparing to unleash the full might of the Imperial fleet. The silence was deafening as the massive Imperial warships drew nearer. Then, with a blinding flash, the lead ship fired. A streak of energy lanced toward the human fleet. Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "Brace for impact. Hold steady." The battle for the galaxy had begun. The battle ignites. The silence in the vast emptiness of space was shattered by the crackling hum of energy weapons firing. A massive beam of destructive force streaked across the void, aimed directly at the lead ship of the human fleet. The Imperial flagship had fired the first shot, but Sarah Chin, captain of the human fleet, remained calm. Her eyes were locked on the display, calculating the trajectory of the incoming attack. "Brace for impact." Sarah's voice rang out through the comms, steady and commanding. The crew of the human ships followed her orders without hesitation, adjusting their positions in perfect unison. They knew what was at stake. This was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for freedom. The energy beam from the Imperial ship slammed into one of the human vessels, the force of the impact shaking it to its core. But the ship held firm. The Imperial weapons, while powerful, weren't as devastating as the Empire believed. The humans had anticipated this. "Damage report," Sarah demanded, her eyes never leaving the screen. A moment later, the tactical officer responded. "Shields are holding, Captain. Minimal damage. We're still in the fight." Sarah exhaled slowly. The humans had crafted their fleet to withstand the worst, designed with scavenged technology and advanced modifications. They had turned what the Empire had once seen as weakness into a powerful asset. The Empire was underestimating them, and that was their biggest mistake. "Return fire," Sarah ordered, her voice cool but filled with purpose. "Show them what humanity can do." In an instant, the human ships fired back, their weapons unleashing a barrage of energy blasts. The initial impact of their attack was a mere spark against the hulking Imperial ships, but the humans had something the Empire did not: ingenuity. Each blast was calculated, each maneuver executed with precision. The humans were fighting not just with weapons, but with everything they had: their resourcefulness, their adaptability, and their resolve. Zixna, watching from the bridge of the Imperial flagship, felt her frustration grow. The human ships were so far beneath the Empire in terms of technology, yet their response was far more coordinated than she had anticipated. Their tactics were unconventional, unpredictable. She had expected them to crumble, but they held their ground, stubbornly fighting back. "How are they doing this?" she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Her officer, a young Oshen, nervously checked the readings. "Admiral, they're using hit-and-run tactics, weaving through our fire. It's like they've learned how to anticipate our movements." "Impossible," Zixna hissed. "They've had decades to rebuild, but they should still be far behind us. They must have some trick up their sleeves." While Zixna was preoccupied with her frustration, the battle on the human side was evolving. Sarah had expected the Empire's overconfidence to be their greatest vulnerability, and so far, she had been proven right. She gave quick orders, directing her ships to target the weakest points of the Imperial fleet's defenses. The Empire had underestimated human resilience, But it was quickly becoming clear that the humans were more than capable of challenging their invincible reputation. "Target their engines," Sarah instructed. "We need to cripple their mobility." The human fleet adjusted their formations, firing in perfect synchronization. Their aim was precise, hitting the weaker points of the Imperial ships with deadly accuracy. As the first Imperial warship's engines were disabled, it drifted, vulnerable, in the cold void of space. The humans had struck their first blow. It was a small victory, but it was enough to send a clear message to the Empire. Humans were not to be taken lightly. On the Imperial flagship, panic started to rise. Zixna had no idea how to counter this. "Deploy more ships," she barked. "I want their entire fleet engaged. Crush them now." The human fleet wasn't just holding steady. They were slowly but surely turning the tide. The Empire's enormous warships were powerful, but they were also sluggish and rigid in their movements. The human ships, by contrast, were small, agile, and highly maneuverable. Every time the Empire fired, the humans dodged, slipping through their fire like shadows. Every shot that missed was a blow to the Empire's pride, and with each passing moment, the humans gained more ground. "We've got them where we want them," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with determination. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere. Her crew was no longer fighting out of desperation. They were fighting with purpose, with a unity that made them stronger than any Imperial fleet could ever be. Zixna was growing increasingly frustrated. "Report," she demanded, her voice barely controlled. "The humans have disabled 2 of our ships," Admiral Shan said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They're more organized than we thought." "They can't be. They should have folded by now," Zixna hissed. "It doesn't make sense." "Admiral, they've breached our outer defenses. The human fleet is moving in," Shan reported urgently. Zixna's exoskeleton bristled with fury. "Increase firepower," she ordered, but the damage had already been done. The Empire's once impenetrable dominance was being challenged in ways they hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, on the human ships, Sarah's confidence only grew. She watched as the enemy's once powerful fleet began to falter. The humans were making progress, small victories were accumulating, and the Empire's overconfidence was slowly turning into doubt. "We're winning this," Sarah whispered under her breath, but she knew the hardest part was still ahead. The battle had just begun, and the stakes had never been higher. As both fleets continued to clash, the battle for the galaxy's future was far from decided. The Galactic Empire's arrogance was being tested, and humanity had proven it was capable of more than anyone, including the Empire, had ever imagined. The spark of rebellion had ignited, and it was only a matter of time before it would spread like wildfire across the galaxy. But in that moment, one thing was clear: the humans were no longer the underdogs. They had become a force to be reckoned with, and the Empire would have to fight harder than ever to hold on to its power. Turning the tide, the battle raged on, a chaotic dance of energy beams and evasive maneuvers. The once pristine Imperial warships, mighty and unstoppable, now bore the scars of a relentless human onslaught. Sarah Chen's strategy had been simple yet brilliant. Use the Empire's overconfidence against them. And it was working. With every blast from the human fleet, the Empire's towering ships faltered. The humans were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. The Imperial fleet, large and formidable, began to break apart in sections. One ship, once thought to be indestructible, had its shields overwhelmed by a calculated barrage of fire. Its engines sputtered, and within moments, the massive vessel was drifting, powerless, through the cold expanse of space. The human fleet had successfully disabled 2 of the Empire's largest ships, and it was only the beginning. Zixna, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, was pacing on the bridge of her flagship, her many eyes scanning the reports streaming in. Her fingers trembled slightly as they hovered over the tactical console. "This can't be happening. How are they doing this?" she muttered under her breath. The humans were supposed to be a relic of the past, weak, incapable of putting up any kind of real resistance. But the humans had found their strength in numbers, strategy, and the unbreakable resolve to protect their freedom. "Admiral, we've lost 2 of our ships, and their fleet is not retreating. They've adapted to our tactics," reported Shan, his voice tight with disbelief. Zixna's mandibles clicked together in frustration. "Adapted? Impossible. Their technology is nowhere near ours." The human fleet, in contrast, was growing more unified with every passing minute. Sarah watched as her ships moved like a single organism, each one anticipating the next move of the Empire, each one a step ahead. The human ships, though small and imperfect, had become a well-oiled machine, working together in a way that the Empire's immense but clunky warships could never match. "We need to change the game," Sarah said firmly, her eyes glued to the battle. The humans had gained the upper hand, but it was not enough yet. Zixna would not back down easily. Sarah's plan was risky, but it was the only way to ensure that the humans could seize victory. "Prepare the EMP charges," Sarah ordered. "It's time we hit them where it hurts." The order was passed down through the ranks. The crew of the human fleet went to work, setting up the electromagnetic pulses that would disable the Imperial ship's advanced systems. It was a move that would require precise timing. One mistake, and the plan could backfire, leaving the humans vulnerable. But Sarah had faith in her crew. They had trained for this moment. The Empire, still focused on retaliating with overwhelming firepower, failed to anticipate the incoming shift in tactics. Zixna's ships launched more energy beams, trying to decimate the humans' fragile-looking fleet. But in that moment, the first wave of human EMP charges was deployed. The burst of energy shot outward, expanding like a shockwave across the battlefield. Several of the Imperial warships flickered, their energy shields dropping instantly. Systems failed. Engines sputtered and went dark. The mighty Empire's technological superiority had been neutralized. Zixna stared in horror as her flagship systems began to fail. "What is this?" she hissed, slamming her clawed fist into the console. "This is impossible. We should have crushed them already." Shan's voice trembled. "Admiral, they're EMP blasts. They've disabled our shields. Some of our ships are completely unresponsive." The human fleet, seizing the opportunity, struck with deadly precision. The once overwhelming Imperial force was now at the mercy of the humans' resourceful strikes. The battle had taken a turn that Zixna could never have foreseen. The Empire, which had conquered worlds and crushed entire civilizations, was now fighting for its survival. As Sarah watched the destruction unfold, a deep sense of satisfaction settled in her chest. This wasn't just a victory in space, it was the culmination of everything humanity had worked for. Years of preparation, innovation, and sacrifice had brought them here. The Empire, despite its immense power, was vulnerable to the one thing it never understood: the power of human ingenuity. "Keep the pressure on them," Sarah commanded, her voice filled with unwavering resolve. "We've got them on the ropes now. Let's finish this." The human ships continued to swarm the crippled Imperial fleet, their weapons firing with deadly accuracy. A second wave of EMP charges was released, further crippling the Imperial warships and leaving them helpless in the void. The mighty Empire, which had once seemed invincible, was slowly being reduced to ashes. But Zixna was not ready to admit defeat. She still had one final card to play. "All remaining ships, rally to my flagship. We will fight until the last ship falls," she growled. "This will not be our end." However, the humans were prepared for that too. Sarah had anticipated the Empire's desperation. The human fleet moved in, a coordinated mass of ships, overwhelming the remaining Imperial forces with sheer numbers and tactics. The Empire's last-ditch efforts to regroup were futile. As the final Imperial ship went dark, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. The battle was won, but the war, the fight for freedom, was far from over. The human fleet, battered but victorious, was the first of many waves to come. The galaxy had been watching, and what had seemed impossible just days ago was now a reality. Zixna's flagship was the last to remain standing, but it was soon surrounded. With a final defiant command, the Imperial flagship self-destructed, taking down the last vestiges of the Empire's presence in that part of space. As the smoke cleared in space, Sarah turned to her crew, her face a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We did it. The Empire is no more." The human fleet was now a beacon of hope in the galaxy, a symbol that, no matter how overwhelming the odds, humanity would always find a way to rise up, to fight, and to overcome. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's grip on the galaxy had been shattered, and the spark of rebellion had lit a fire that would spread far beyond the reaches of this battle. The humans had proved their strength, their resilience, and their will to fight for a future where they could thrive. And this was just the beginning. The spark of rebellion. The stars seemed brighter now, almost as if the very universe itself was bearing witness to the unfolding revolution. The battle was over, and for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire had been dealt a crushing blow. The Imperial fleet, once thought to be unstoppable, was now a shattered shell of its former might. What had started as an underdog struggle for survival had turned into a momentous victory for humanity. As the last Imperial warships drifted into the black abyss, Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the lead human ship, her gaze fixed on the endless expanse of space. Her heart was still racing from the battle, but her mind was already moving to the next steps. The war was far from over, and while this victory would resonate across the galaxy, the true challenge lay ahead, ensuring that the Empire wouldn't rise again. Sarah turned to her crew, who were still processing the magnitude of what had just happened. "This is just the beginning," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the buzz of excitement. "The Empire may have lost this battle, but they will not be defeated so easily. We have to be ready for what comes next." Her first officer, Mikano, nodded in agreement. "The Empire will retaliate. They won't forget this humiliation. But we've proven something today. They can be beaten. That will inspire others." "Exactly," Sarah said, her expression hardening. "We've set a fire in the hearts of the oppressed. We can't stop now. We need to spread the message of what we've done here. Every corner of the galaxy must know that humanity is no longer a footnote in history. We're a force to be reckoned with." Meanwhile, aboard what remained of the Imperial ships, Zixna was not ready to accept defeat. Her exoskeleton vibrated with frustration as she surveyed the wreckage of her fleet. She had underestimated the humans, but she was far from defeated. The Empire had its flaws, yes, but it was still the most powerful force in the galaxy. They would regroup, rebuild, and strike back. She leaned over a console, her mandibles clicking in thought. "This will not be the end of us," she muttered, her voice dripping with venom. "We will crush them, no matter what it takes." Zixna's mind raced. She began to formulate a plan to salvage the Empire's honor and exact revenge on the humans. It would take time to rebuild, but the Galactic Empire had resources that the humans could never hope to match. She would call upon the Empire's hidden forces, those lurking in the distant corners of the galaxy, far from the reach of this initial battle. "Prepare the secret fleet," she ordered coldly. "We will find a way to crush this rebellion before it can gain any real traction. And this time, we will ensure that the humans have no chance of survival." Back with Sarah's fleet, word of their victory was beginning to spread. News of the battle quickly reached planets and stations that had long been under the thumb of the Empire. The people who had once lived in fear of the Imperial fleet now had hope. The human victory had lit the spark of rebellion across the galaxy, and it spread like wildfire. "We need to act fast," Sarah said as she looked out the viewport, her expression thoughtful. "We need to build alliances, gather more forces. We can't fight the Empire alone." Her crew members agreed. The victory had given them a taste of what was possible, but it was only the beginning. If they were to stand a chance against the full might of the Empire, They would need more than just their fleet. They would need allies, other species that had suffered under imperial rule, who might be willing to join their cause. In the weeks that followed, Sarah's fleet traveled from system to system, reaching out to other oppressed species. Some were hesitant, scared by years of subjugation. Others had already begun to rise up in small pockets of resistance, inspired by the humans' triumph. Slowly but surely, the alliances formed, a growing coalition of species united by the common goal of overthrowing the Empire. But as Sarah worked to build this new alliance, she knew the Empire was regrouping as well. Zixna was not one to forget a defeat. Sarah had seen it in her eyes, the rage, the hunger for revenge. The Empire would be back, stronger than before. And they would stop at nothing to crush the humans and their newfound allies. "We have to be ready," Sarah said to her crew one evening, her voice steady and resolute. "The next battle won't be easy. It will be a fight for everything we've gained and everything we've yet to build." Meccano looked at her with unwavering loyalty. "We're ready, Captain. We've already done the impossible once. We can do it again." The coalition continued to grow, and with every passing day, the fight against the Empire seemed more achievable. But Sarah's thoughts often drifted back to Zixna. The battle they had fought was just a prelude to something far greater, something that would change the course of the galaxy forever. One day, the Empire would return in full force. But when they did, they would face something they never expected. An unstoppable alliance of species, united by the spark of rebellion that the humans had ignited. As Sarah stood before her crew, ready to take the next step, she knew that they were no longer the underdogs. They were the beacon of hope for every world that had ever been oppressed by the Empire. And with every victory, every battle fought, they would grow stronger, until they were no longer just a fleet, but a force of nature, sweeping through the galaxy in pursuit of freedom. And as the stars stretched out before them, Sarah felt something stir deep within her, a sense of purpose and determination that would not be extinguished. The fight for the future had only just begun. The alliance of the underdogs. The stars, once a distant and unreachable expanse, now felt like a map of endless possibilities. Humanity's victory had shattered the Empire's invincible image, but Sarah Chen knew that the real war was just beginning. The human fleet, though victorious, was still small, and their enemies were vast. They needed to expand, gather strength, and form alliances with those who had been crushed under the Empire's heel for centuries. But the road to unity would not be easy. With every passing day, Sarah's fleet navigated through the darkened corridors of space, making contact with species that had lived in fear of the Empire's reach. The reactions were mixed. Some species, wary of the rebellion's sudden rise, hesitated to join. Others, their spirits broken by years of tyranny, were eager to unite and fight back. "We're building something bigger here," Sarah said as she addressed her crew. "This isn't just about humans anymore. This is for every species the Empire has crushed. It's time to let the galaxy know we are no longer afraid." The first stop on their journey was the planet Elder, home to the reptilian Elki, a species known for their fierce independence, but long subjugated by imperial forces. The Elki had once been a thriving civilization, but under the Empire's control, their culture had been systematically erased, and their people oppressed. Sarah knew the Elki's trust would not come easily, but they had no choice but to try. As their ship entered the orbit of Elder, Sarah's pulse quickened. She had prepared her speech, her strategy, but there was no guarantee the Elki would listen. The Elki had always fought alone. It would take more than just words to win them over. It would take proof. A transmission was received from the Elki's government, an invitation to meet in their capital city. Sarah, Meccano, and a few members of the crew prepared to meet the Elki leaders. The tension in the room was palpable as the airlock opened, and they were escorted to a grand chamber, where the Council of Elki elders awaited them. They were a formidable sight, tall, with scales that gleamed like polished armor, their eyes cold and calculating. The leader of the Elki, Varric, spoke first, his voice deep and resonant. You humans dare come to us with your offer of alliance. Why should we trust you? Your victory over the Empire was nothing more than a fluke. The Empire will come for you again, and you will crumble. Sarah met Varric's gaze with unwavering confidence. The Empire may have underestimated us, but it's more than just our strength that they should fear. It's the will of every species in the galaxy that has been crushed by their tyranny. The Empire has been in power for far too long. This isn't a fluke. It's the beginning of a galaxy-wide rebellion. And you, Varric, can be part of it. Together, we can end their rule once and for all. Varric's eyes flickered, the briefest hint of uncertainty passing over his features. And what makes you think we would join you? Your fleet is small. We are not foolish enough to follow a group of humans who have only tasted victory once. Sarah's voice was calm but firm. We may be small, but we are united. Every ship in our fleet, every member of our crew, believes in this fight. We've fought the Empire and won. We can do it again, and we can do it together. The Elki Council murmured amongst themselves, weighing the offer. Sarah could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was no longer just about military strategy. It was about convincing these ancient, proud beings that they could trust the humans, trust the rebellion, and trust the promise of freedom. After a tense silence, Varric nodded. You speak with conviction. I will consider your offer, but the Elki do not act hastily. We will watch you. Prove to us that this rebellion is more than just a fleeting spark, and we will join you. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had planted the seed. It wasn't much, but it was something. We will prove it, she promised, and we will show you that together we can break the chains that have bound us for so long. The crew returned to their ship, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was a turning point. If the Elki joined their cause, it would be a major victory, not just for humanity, but for every species that had ever been oppressed. It would be a signal to the Empire that their rule was coming to an end. But even as the humans celebrated their progress, Sarah knew that the Empire was already preparing for their next move. The victories had ignited a fire, but it was a fire that would burn the humans and their allies as much as it would the Empire. The battle for the galaxy was no longer just about military strength. It was about hearts and minds. And the Empire had one advantage that the rebellion could not ignore: their vast, unyielding power. We'll need more than just the Elki, Sarah said to Mimkano as they stood together on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. The Empire will be coming for us with everything they have. We can't fight this alone. Mimkano nodded. We won't. The message is spreading. Other species are beginning to take notice. Sarah's mind raced with the possibilities. The alliance was growing. They had more allies than they had ever imagined. But with every new ally, the Empire would grow more determined. Zixna was not one to leave a threat unchecked, and Sarah knew the Empire would strike back harder than before. The real test was yet to come. Let's make sure we're ready, Sarah said, her voice resolute. The future of the galaxy depends on it. As Sarah and her crew prepared for the next phase of their journey, a quiet optimism began to take root. They had proven that the Empire could be beaten. They had proven that even the smallest of fleets could bring down the mightiest of empires. Now they would prove that unity could topple the most tyrannical power in the galaxy. The rebellion was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a reality. And as Sarah looked out into the star-filled void, she knew that the path to freedom was within their grasp. But it would take more than just victory. It would take everything they had. The calm before the storm. The weight of leadership was something Sarah Chen had grown accustomed to over the past few months, but it still carried a burden she could never truly shake. The alliance was growing, yes, but it wasn't enough yet. Every victory brought them closer to the inevitable clash with the Galactic Empire. And Sarah couldn't afford to relax, not for a moment. The humans and their newfound allies, Species from across the galaxy, many of them once divided or broken under imperial rule, were still facing the impossible task of going up against an empire that had ruled with an iron fist for centuries. And yet, Sarah could feel a change in the air. The tide of the galaxy was shifting. Her ship, the Pride of Earth, drifted silently through the blackness of space, now accompanied by a growing armada of ships from the Elki and several smaller species that had joined their cause. For the first time in history, these species were united under a single banner: freedom from the Empire's oppression. But the silence of space was deceptive. Sarah knew the Empire was already regrouping. Even in their defeat, they were far from defeated. Zixna and her command over the Empire's remaining forces would be more dangerous than ever. She was determined, ruthless, and now more desperate than ever to restore the Empire's tarnished reputation. "We've made good progress," Meccano said, his voice filled with quiet optimism as he reviewed the latest reports. "The Elki have rallied behind us, and we've made new contacts. Some of the other systems are hesitant, but they're watching us. The Empire's defeat has sparked hope across the galaxy." Sarah nodded, but there was a heaviness to her heart. It's not enough. The Empire will have learned from their mistakes. Zixna will be more careful next time. She'll come for us with everything she has. "Then we'll be ready," Meccano replied, his tone firm. The human fleet, now bolstered by the Elki, had become a formidable force. But their strength lay not in the number of ships they had, but in the unity they had forged. Sarah could see the beginning of something greater, a galaxy-wide resistance movement that could shake the foundations of the Empire itself. But the enemy they faced was powerful and ruthless. The next battle would test their resolve, and only through cunning, courage, and sheer determination could they hope to survive it. For now, however, there was a brief lull. The calm before the storm. Sarah used this time to prepare. She called her key officers to the command center, determined to make the most of this fleeting peace. "We don't have the luxury of time," Sarah began, addressing her officers. "We're at the edge of something bigger than any of us. The Empire will come for us soon. We need to be prepared for a full-scale assault. We can't afford to waste another minute." The room fell silent, everyone knowing what was at stake. Sarah's crew had followed her through every battle, every harrowing decision, and they trusted her judgment. But now, with the stakes higher than ever, Sarah knew they couldn't afford to make a mistake. They were outnumbered, and the Empire's technological superiority still loomed over them like a shadow. "We're in a good position now, but we need more allies," Sarah continued. "We need to secure the systems that haven't chosen sides yet. Every ship, every weapon counts. We can't just rely on the ones who've joined us so far. We need to convince the others that the Empire's defeat isn't just a fluke. It's the beginning of a new era." "How do we convince them?" asked Captain Lyra, the Elki representative who had become one of Sarah's most trusted allies. "The Empire's propaganda runs deep. Many believe that without the Empire, the galaxy would fall into chaos. They are afraid of what will happen without their order." Sarah sighed, her mind already working through the possibilities. "We show them that unity works. That together, we can build something better. The Empire offers oppression, fear, and conformity. We offer freedom, diversity, and hope." Lyra nodded. "It's a hard sell, especially to those who have lived under the Empire's boot for so long." "I know," Sarah said, her voice softening. "But it's the only choice we have. We can't afford to wait for the Empire to make the first move. We need to take the initiative." In the days that followed, the human fleet embarked on a diplomatic mission, reaching out to systems that were still undecided. Sarah knew the key to winning over the galaxy was not through sheer force, but through diplomacy and building trust. The Empire had ruled through fear. The humans, along with their growing alliance, would win through conviction and solidarity. But even as Sarah moved to expand her coalition, the Empire was not idle. Zixna had retreated into the heart of Imperial space, rebuilding her forces and crafting a plan for retaliation. It wasn't just a counterattack. It was a statement that the Empire would never allow its dominance to be challenged, and that the humans' rebellion would be crushed, no matter the cost. Zixna's mind was consumed with one thought: revenge. The humiliation of defeat, of losing to a species that the Empire had written off as insignificant, was something she could not allow to go unpunished. The human rebellion was not just an obstacle, it was a direct threat to the Empire's control over the galaxy. In the quiet of the Imperial Command Center, Zixna stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, her clawed fingers tapping anxiously on the console. They believe they've won. They believe they can defeat us. But I will show them the true power of the Empire. Her voice was cold, filled with venom. The rebellion will be crushed, and once the humans are dealt with, every species that has dared defy the Empire will be put back in their place. As Zixna prepared for her return to battle, Sarah and her fleet continued to press forward, meeting with new allies and spreading the message of hope and freedom. But with each passing day, the tension in the galaxy mounted. The Empire was preparing for war. The humans and their allies would soon face their greatest challenge. Sarah felt the weight of the coming storm. But as the lull in battle stretched on, she remained determined. The calm before the storm was their chance to prepare. And when the storm finally arrived, they would be ready. Together, they would fight, not just for their own survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself.